can see that Nano Banana finished up in the background, and now our slideshow has changed to ready. So what this means is that we can review these images now by clicking into the card like this. So here we've got corporate hacks that made my coworkers think I'm way more senior than I actually am. Now, in this record in Airtable, number one, what we can see is the cover image. And you can see it did a beautiful job of bringing in our reference image. So again, here is the reference image we gave Nano Banana based off of this account. And look at our first slide, our cover slide. Perfect job right there. It did a really good job with the text. Corporate hacks that made my coworkers think I'm way more senior than I actually am. So that's the preview of the cover slide. And then again, within this Airtable record, you can see we have our slides here one by one. So we can open up each of these. We can review the title text, the body text, and the actual slide. So we can open this one up. So here's slide number one, block your calendar strategically. And it did, again, a really good job with the text. And in terms of the images, it's using kind of the office aesthetic here. For this one, it put 3 images on the slide. And we can go through each of these slides if we want, just to review what the aesthetic looks like. So number 2 is the 24-hour email rule. Draft emotional emails, but wait 24 hours before sending. You'll sound so much more composed. And senior leaders literally never send reactive messages. Again, this time we've got 6 images in the slideshow. So I'm not sure if that's in my prompt or not, but it's something we can review. And then here is the third slide. And again, something's going on with the grid images, but here is where you can review all of the slides. Again, what we're looking for is the overall visual aesthetic. Does it match what you're trying to accomplish? And if not, again, what you can do is go back to the automation tab, and this is where you can edit your image style. So again, I can come back into automations, and now for my image style, what I'm gonna try to add here as part of my prompt is single image only, no collages, no grids, no split frames. So again, right now, we have not turned our automation on. We're at the stage where we're still reviewing it and kind of perfecting the look and feel before we turn it to active. Now, with that new image prompt, I can go back to my slideshow here. And so if I want to regenerate those images, again, from the interface view, I'm going to click back into the record. And for status, I'm just going to change it from ready to approved. And what that should do is re-trigger the N8N automation to regenerate those images. And you can see the status has already changed to rendering. So hopefully we'll come back and we'll have some new images to check out. All right, so we can see that has regenerated. The status is back at ready. And now if we go into these slides, what we can see, hopefully, is we have single images, no more grid images, right? So we still have the same title and we still have the same text, but now we've regenerated the image based on the updated prompt that we made to the automation. So you can see how you're able to change all of this directly through Airtable. Now, once you're happy with your setup here in terms of the types of images that are coming through and the types of slides in terms of the text that's being generated, it's time to activate the actual automation, right? And so what that will do is turn on the automation and it will start generating these slideshows and publishing them to TikTok automatically. So the way that we do that is we go back to the automation tab, and you can see we have a status column here. And when I do this drop down and I turn this to active, it will activate your automation. So I'm going to check that on to active. And what this is going to do, again, is schedule this out to publish to TikTok with music. So I think this is a good time to hop into N8N and just do an overview of the actual automation inside of there. All right, so let's hop into N8N and look at what's going on behind the scenes. And I have pulled up one of the runs here that actually published to TikTok. I think it was last night. So let's talk about the top half of this automation, which is the schedule trigger. And what this is doing is it's eventually generating the text for the slides. So it's starting with a schedule trigger. So what this is doing is it's checking every hour. This is running every hour. And what it's going to do is check Airtable to see what automations are active. Okay, so again, remember, inside of Airtable, right now, I have 2 automations that are set to active. Now, if you're not ready to publish these, of course, you could set this to draft or even paused and it will skip those over. It won't pull them in. But last night when this ran, I had this personal finance niche automation set to active. And so that's what this Airtable is doing, right? So again, on the schedule, this is going to trigger every hour, and then Airtable is going to look, okay, which automations are active, and you can see it pulled in the personal finance one here. All right, now the next node is a code node here, and we're filtering by the schedule. Now remember, just because an automation is active doesn't mean we need to publish it every hour, right? Because we have these post times. We only want to publish at 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock, not every single hour. So what this code node is doing is it's basically checking the current day and time against each automation's posting schedule. And it's filtering out any automations that do not match the current time. Now, in this example, it did match the current time, which was, I think, 9 o'clock. And so you can see it pushed this automation through. Now, on the bottom part right here, this webhook node, this is kind of the manual process where you can generate the slides manually. Now, you'll remember earlier on in the video, when I was reviewing the slideshows, I was reviewing the text, and I wanted to make the text shorter, right? So I came in here and I changed the narrative prompt, and then I clicked that Run Now button. Remember when I did that? So what that Run Now button does is it generates this webhook down here, and then that gets the manual automations. In other words, the records where this button was just checked. And so that's the manual way that you can fire off this automation. And so I have a merge node here that's just combining the automations that are on a schedule with any automations that you're running manually. All right, next we have a code node. And as you can see, this is building the prompt for Claude, which we're going to use in the next node. And so this creates the Claude prompt based on, you can see the niche that you enter, the narrative prompt that you enter, and the format prompt. And so you can see that's going into the user prompt over here. The niche, the narrative, and the format prompts are helping to generate the user prompt for Claude. And then it's also building the system prompt, which you can see over here. So casual, lowercase text style. So again, we're pulling that in from the format prompt. So this code node is taking that information from Airtable, and it's going to build out the system and the user prompt, which we're then going to feed into a Claude node in the next node here. So if I open up this Claude node, for the user prompt, you can see we're just pulling in from the code node here, and then same idea for the system prompt here, we're pulling it from the code node as well. So that code node is really doing the heavy lifting in terms of writing our prompt. Then we're just passing those variables into the Claude node here. Then after the Claude node, we have another code node, which is basically just going to parse the response. It's going to handle those markdown code blocks, and it's going to return structured data like the hook and then the slides, and then for each slide, we've got the title and the body. So you can see how nicely this is formatted from the code node. Then after that, we just have an if node, which is checking for an error. And if there's an error, we'll write it to Airtable. If no error, we're going to go to Airtable and create that slideshow. So if I go back into Airtable, we can see this is the actual slideshow here. The money lessons I wish someone told me at 25. And then if I go into the actual Airtable database here in the slideshow table, it's this column, this third one right here. So it's filling in all of this information inside of Airtable. Now we've got another code node, and these are all written by ChatGPT and Claude, by the way. So it's going to loop through the slides array from the previous AI response, and it's going to output the individual items like the slide number, the title text, and the body text. So you can see we've got 7 items here, which are the 7 slides that are going to be generated. Then we've got another Airtable node. So what we're doing is passing in the data from the code node into Airtable. So we've got the slide number, the slideshow, the title text, and the body text. And so we now have got all 7 slides inside of Airtable. Then we've got another Airtable node here, which is updating the last run. So this is sending a timestamp inside of Airtable. We have a last run field here. And so what this does is it prevents double posting within the same hour. And then we have an if path. And so what this is checking for is if our status is set to active here. And if the automation is set to active, it's going to go to this Airtable node, which is going to update the status as approved. And if it's approved, it's going to continue on through the rest of the automation, which is actually going to create those images and post them to TikTok. Now, when you come into your slideshow and you have changed this to approved, or when it's approved through the top of the N8N workflow over here, it triggers the bottom half of our automation. And so this webhook is looking for the status of Airtable when it's approved. And when that kicks off, we have an Airtable node that's just going to pull in the record ID of that specific slideshow. And then you remember when I was doing this manually, the next node here is we're just changing the status to rendering. So again, during this manual process, you know that it's rendering. So that's what this step is here. Now, each slideshow record has a collection of slides, right? So each one of these are slideshows. And then when we go down here, you can see we have these linked records. So these are the slides that are attached to each slideshow. Now, to pull that out in Airtable, what we have here is a code node that's going to help build that filter. So this code node is creating a filter that we're going to use in this next Airtable record to get the slides. So you can see we're filtering by a formula here that was created by the code node. So you'll see all the way at the bottom, we're using this filter. So now we're able to pull in that linked record, which has the actual 7 slides. And now that we have those slides, we're going to use a code node. We're going to use another code node, and this is going to build one job per image to send to FAL AI. So we've got 8 items here. We've got 7 for the slides and 1 for the cover image. And now we're sending that to FAL AI with an HTTP request. So in FAL AI, we're using Nano Banana Pro. And you can see we've got our URL up here. We've got our JSON body down here, again, coming from the code node. And you can see on the output side with these URLs, these are the actual images of the slides that FAL AI is generating. So if I open one of these up in a new tab, you can see this is the slide for one of the slideshows fully generated with Nano Banana Pro inside of FAL AI. So that's what this node is doing over here. Now the next node is an if node, and it's checking if the image is a hook image or not, because in Airtable, we have a specific field for the hook image, which you can see on the true branch, we have this one item. So this is the hook image here. And again, if I open this up, we can see this is the hook image or the cover image. I'm 28, and these are the money mistakes I finally stopped making. And then on the false branch, these are just all of the slides, right? The non-hook slides. And so for both of those paths, we're just updating the images into Airtable. We're merging those as done. Then we've got another Airtable node, which is just updating the status to ready. We have an if node to check that the status is set to active. And then what this code node is doing is it's collecting all of the image URLs for the slideshow. You can see over here, because we need to pass this in to Blotato in the next step to publish to TikTok. So here is our Blotato node. And again, Blotato is a service that allows you to publish automatically to different social networks. And so you can see the way that we have this configured here. And again, this is coming from the code node here for our text. This is the caption, which is pulling from this field. And then we have our media URLs, which are all of these images over here. You can see the expression that we're using. We're joining all of the URLs so that Blotato publishes these images one by one as a slideshow. Then you can see the title field is coming from this title over here. And then for a couple of settings down here, I do have is AI generated. And then importantly, this is a really nice setting inside of Blotato, is that we have music automatically added to here, because you'll notice on most slideshows, they are published with music. And so what this does is automatically put music on your slideshows. So if we come into one of these slideshows that published on my account, and let me just play this. So you can see Blotato is automatically applying some music. Honestly, I'm not sure how they decide which music to put on there, but I do think it's a nice touch. And then finally, we're going back to Airtable to update the status as published. So you can see in my Airtable in the slideshow page, these have all been published. And you can also view them in the output gallery one by one, and you can see these are tagged as published as well. So I know that was a bit of a longer video. I know it seemed pretty involved. Again, if you want access to that complete workflow, the N8N template, the Airtable base, and direct support from me, make sure to check out my premium community, Scale AI. So this is AI and automation for TikTok shops, for e-commerce brands and creative agencies who are learning how to implement and use AI in their business.